when you're putting a queen cell, if you dequeen a hive and cut queen cells out, first cut way in behind the queen cell, because queen cells are kind of like trees. They have deeper roots than what you might assume. But if you're using plastic foundation, you can still cut queen cells out. You just have to be careful about it. And if you open up the back side of the queen cell on plastic foundation, if you're seeing a pupa, then discard the cell. But if you're seeing royal jelly, keep the cell and just mash it up against the comb on another frame, and use that frame to introduce into another hive. If you see the pupa, there's a chance that it dries out a little bit or it's damaged, and the bees will probably remove it, cannibalize it or remove it. But if you're seeing royal jelly, pupa's never been exposed, almost all the time they will accept that. So you can still cut out comb or cut out cells on plastic foundation. You just have to be careful about it. And after you've destroyed a couple of dozen of them, you've learned to be careful about it. You learn what being careful entails. And
they are pretty soft.
What's that?
They are pretty soft.
They are pretty soft, and when you're cutting in behind the cells, just a sharp pocket knife blade or a scalpel or something like that, and right down against the plastic, and just ease around, and then kind of tease the thing away from the, not in direct contact with it, kind of tease it away from and fold it away from the plastic. Once you get all the wax cut around, and you just leave a little hinge on one side, and then you can cut that off when you have a big wad of wax on the other side of it. But once you get the hang of it, it's not as difficult as it may sound. And choose a nice big queen cells. If you dequeen a hive and there's a lot of queen cells in there, they might make 4 and they might make 24. But choose a nice big long fat queen cells and cut those out and use those to raise queens in another hive. The little peanut kind of cells, they'll still make a queen. It just depends on how desperate you are for a queen, whether or not you save those. But I have saved them. I'm kind of soft-hearted toward queens and bees and things, and until they give me a reason to not be soft-hearted, and then I'm kind of vicious toward them.
You said even those queens are better than no queen.
That's right. I mean, and that's what it comes to. When you're a beekeeper and you're looking for a queen and there's none to be had, you realize that any queen is better than no queen. Now, there is a little caveat to that, is try not to buy a queen from a part of the country that has Africanized bees. Because even if that is a reputable queen breeder, they have no idea what drones that she mated with. So, Florida below Orlando, if you want to buy bees from there, fine. They'll make a good beekeeper out of you. If you have bees from South Florida or South Texas, they'll make a good beekeeper out of you, because you'll learn to persevere through pain. And you'll also learn that there's got to be a better way to do this than have to deal with these. And it's not about the bees being nasty in behavior and stinging you. It's about them being crazy in the hive. You can't find queens. The bees all run from you. It's freaky. If you've never been in a hive like that, when you pull a frame up, a brood frame that has larvae on it, bees should stay on there and just be milling around on the frame. When you pull it up out of the hive, by the time you get it this far above the hive, the bees have all run to one corner and jumped off.
If you get that in your gene pool, how long does it take, do you think, on average, to get the genetics gone, that trait?
Depends on where you live. If you live in South Florida, you won't ever get it out because the drone pool is too extensive there. You won't ever get away from that drone pool. If you live in Pennsylvania, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 generations of bees to get it out.
Because I know a guy just showing pictures on Facebook. He just delivered spreading his packages from Florida, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
North Florida is okay. South Florida is. I have to say this about it: the bees are actually great. They are very productive. They're good at staying alive, and they're good at making you not stay alive. You know they're actually not what you would think of Africanized bees being real nasty to work and trying to sting you to death. They're not like that, but they'll frustrate you to no end. But as far as staying alive and as far as being productive, they are. But they're the sort of bees that you suit up before you get there, and they will take advantage of you. They don't hunt you down to sting you, but if you're there and handy, they will. And put your pants in your boots, suit on. If you have a jacket and you're wearing jeans, tuck your jacket into your jeans so that there's no way they can get up the hem. Gloves, either over your cuffs or under your cuffs with tight elastic and maybe a wrap of tape. And that's just a standard way that if you're working in them every day, that's how you suit up. And you'll see guys out there working in shorts and a t-shirt. That ain't me. I look at them and I think, man, you have something in your makeup that I just don't have. I'm not going to be comfortable with bees stinging me on all over me throughout the day. 45 or 50 stings a day, and I'm done. I'm not coming back tomorrow.
Kent, if we feel that we find genetics like that in our yard, do we have an ethical obligation to cull that colony or remove that queen? Or
I do.
You do, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's ethical, but I can't describe.
Yeah, but you don't want that drone pool out there. You don't want her making
I
drones.
can't describe myself as ethical, and I can't really describe myself as particularly moral. I may seem that way, but you guys have no idea what's going on inside my head. I'm smiling at somebody and thinking, there's a day in my life I might have just whacked you over the head with a ball bat.
I've been fighting that gene pro.
There you go, Josh.
8 to 10 years, that's fair,
And the problem with having those genetics in your area is what Josh just said. It's the drone pool that you cannot control. Mm-hmm. When that genetic gets into the feral bees in your area, then it's extremely difficult to control. And the only weapon you have against that is trying to flood the drone pool with good drones, and that's not easy either.
Because the defensive trait comes from the drone.
The defensive trait primarily comes from the drone. And I don't know the exact percentage of breakdown, but it's more so from the drone than it is from the queen. There is some part of it to the queen, but color and temperament are influenced mostly by the drones. So flooding the drone pool is a way that you can mitigate that. But until those feral bees are not there anymore, you can't say with 100% accuracy that I'm past this. It was about 4 years ago, I guess, commercial beekeeper that I know very well. He called me, and we've traded bees back and forth. He's bought from us, we've bought from him. And he said, would you need some bees coming back from almonds? I said, I don't know. I'm always game to buy some bees. I'll take a chance on about anything. I said, are they sick? And he said, no, these are healthy bees. They're great. They have, he said, I'll guarantee you'll have 8 frames of brood in each box. Some of them have 12, some of them have 8, but all of them have at least 8. And I said, well, what's the price? And he said, well, I had a customer back out on 48 hives, and I'll sell them to you for what I paid for them in California, and you don't have to pay the shipping. I said, so you're going to bring them to me? And he said, I'll bring them to you. Well, I should have known right then that there was something up.
Too good to be true.
Yeah. But
If it's too good to be true, it ain't.
that's it. But so he brought them, and we unloaded them down this field road here, just set them beside the field road. And it was 12 pallets, 12 four-way pallets. And as soon as he got them unloaded, he didn't even wait for me to give him a check. He just left. And I'm like, this is getting a little bit more concerning all the time. Well, the bees were, I mean, I've worked really bad bees as far as bad actors a lot before. So I wasn't really surprised at how they acted. But within, before I worked through one pallet of those bees, I knew what I'd gotten. And they were from South Florida, and that's where they originated. And he was right. I mean, they were full of brood. All of them were queen right, great queens, evidently. Out of 48 hives, I only visually saw 2 queens. And I'm not that bad at finding queens. And at that time, my eyes hadn't really given me a fit yet. So I wasn't that bad at finding queens. But they would, the foragers would fly out of the hive, and the nurse bees would jump off in the grass or run out the front of the hive. When you would smoke the front of the hive, it'd just be a carpet of bees just run out the front of the hive. Nurse bees. The foragers would all take off. And these bushes up and down the field road would just be full of little wads of bees the size of my hand.
Well, because they swarm like crazy, right? Africanized?
Yeah, but I mean, they were just looking for a place to land with friends,
okay.
you know. And so, I mean, I knew what it was. I knew they were all queen right. I found 2 out of 48 queens, killed them, requeen those hives. And the rest of the summer, I quit looking for queens. There was no point in it. You just couldn't do it. Smoke does not work on those bees, and not in the way that you think it would. If there's a lot of pheromone, if you start smelling bananas, then you can smoke yourself. Or if you smell venom on you, you can smoke yourself. That helps. But as far as stimulating the bees and making them calm in the hive and feed, that doesn't work. When they get smoked, they leave.
Why are they not trying to fill their honey stomachs thinking that the hive is on fire like all the other normal bees do?
That's not an Africanized trait. An Africanized trait is anything that bothers the hive, leave.
Wow.
That's what they do.
They'd rather give the hive up than
Right.
I called it the fire drill. You get a puff of smoke and here they start coming out.
That's exactly right. Then they're gone.
You could have 3 guys on smokers and you cannot keep them down. They'll come right through that smoke. I don't care how bad.
Smoke makes no difference to them, except it will mask the pheromone that's on you.
Oh.
That's the only difference that it makes with them. Well, that entire summer, Valerie never got past this barn without a bee veil on. She worked the garden and she was mad she was mad the entire year, you know. And one evening we were having supper and she said, "When are you going to move those stupid bees?" And I told her, I said, "I'm not moving those bees." And she said, "Why are you going to keep those bees out here the way they act?" She said, they just fly into you and they're like defending the hives when we're 200 yards away from them. That too is an Africanized thing. But I told her, I said, the reason I'm not going to move those bees is because this is our mating yard. And the queens that fly from this mating yard are not going to be mating with those drones.
Right.
Drones only fly about a quarter mile, maybe. Queens will fly 2 miles, 3 miles before they get. Queens will fly past where their hive forages. They can tell that because of the nasinol pheromone from their hive. When they quit detecting the nasinol pheromone, they fly low to the ground. When they stop detecting that pheromone, that's when they go up and find drone congregation areas, or more likely, drone congregation areas find them. That's the more likely scenario. And I told her, I said, I'm not moving those hives because I don't want to take a chance on those drones mating with our queens.
Right. By keeping them here.
By keeping them here, I kind of lessened that likelihood. So the way that I got around that, and this kind of goes into queen rearing. These are things that you need to kind of store away for when you need them later. If you put a capped queen cell in a hive that is drastically different genetically, they will destroy that queen cell. And drastically different genetically also includes laying worker hives. They will destroy a capped queen cell because that capped queen cell has a pupa in it. The pupa has glands that are beginning to develop, that are actually beginning to be recognized by the bees in the hive. And those are things, some of us talked about this earlier this morning, those are things that we can't comprehend. But the bees in the hive can tell that this is a queen in here. She's not one of us. And if we don't want to be ruled by a foreigner, we need to kill her before she comes out of this cell. They will destroy a capped queen cell. That's a pupa. They will not destroy an uncapped cell. That's a larva, drastically different from a pupa. A larva may have the makings of the glands, but they're not beginning to be active at all yet. The body parts have not separated yet, that hadn't begun to pupate. If you put an uncapped queen cell in a hive, that hive, if there's no queen in there, even if there is a queen in there, sometimes they'll still finish it. But that hive will finish an uncapped queen cell, and it will be theirs because they have added their contribution to feed that larva and care for that larva, and that will be their queen, the way they act, and that queen will be a viable queen in the hive. So the way that I requeened all but 2 of those hives, I caught 2 of them and killed them and requeened them, and I had to requeen those using uncapped cells because I tried requeening them with a mated queen. They killed them. I mean, forthwith. They didn't even let them get out of the cage.
Why?
They're different.
They're
They're different.
But they know they're
Different.
not queen right.
But they can sense the genetics of this queen, and they're like, this queen is not going to rule over us.
Wow.
This queen's from West Kentucky.
Yeah.
We're in East Kentucky.
West Kentucky. They're saying this queen come from east of the Tennessee River.
Yes.
That's an Arkansas queen. We know what they do in Arkansas.
Even in a laying worker situation, when they're completely desperate, they won't.
Oh, they'll definitely kill one.
Definitely.
Definitely.
They already got a queen, I think, right?
To them, they're all their own queen.
Yeah.
Well, not all of them, but there's a bunch of laying workers that they see themselves as the queen, and they don't want the competition.
You can have one with a queen, can't you?
It's what?
You can have a laying worker with a queen in the hive.
Well, there are laying workers in almost every hive. It's just that they keep them suppressed. The queen pheromone keeps the laying workers. They still lay eggs, but the other bees, other nurse bees, will be cleaning those eggs out because, and they're stimulated to do that because of the presence of queen pheromone. And when that queen pheromone is removed, they're like, well, I guess this is the only game in town now, this stupid laying worker that we got. But and they stop cleaning those eggs out when there's no queen pheromone. No, they very, very unlikely. Sometimes they do. I mean, you can't say anything is for certain with bees, except a couple of things. You're going to get stung. You can bet on that. But they're unlikely to accept a queen cell. And first, I put a mated queen in the two that I found the queens and killed them. And I mean, they didn't last a day. And then, I mean, and this is another thing. And I have people that text me and say, boy, my bees really love the queen that I put in there. I laid the cage down. They were just all over that cage.
That's not a good sign.
Just because they're all over that cage don't mean they were doing that because they loved her.
Yeah.
You know, they're likely to love her to death.
Yeah.
You know. And when Russian bees were first a thing, I was part of the evaluation group that got Russian queens from the island off the coast of Louisiana. And I would have 40 hive yards set up with blue/brown queens. And then the next year it would be it would be like yellow/green queens. And I evaluated Russian queens for 6 years. And the reason I did that, I thought I'm going to get some good genetics out of this, because all you had to do was measure the square inches of brood and write down all the conditions that were going on. And outside of that, if you wanted to graft off that queen, fine. Or if you wanted to, use drones off that queen, fine. So I had grafted off some of those Russian queens and actually got some mated queens out of it and tried to introduce them into Italian hives. And it was beyond being a tough task. It was, so the next time I put queen cells in, and they tore them down too. That was before I learned that you could use an uncapped cell. And when I had these Africanized bees down here, I went from mated queen, they whacked all them, capped queen cells, they chewed all them down, and I even put them in those little orange queen cell holders, queen cell protectors. They still chewed them down. And that cell protector does not keep the bees from stinging through the side of that cell. And it keeps them from chewing the cell out, but it don't keep them from stinging through the side of it. And they would kill those queens, and I would wind up having a queen cell that looked just right that hadn't emerged in 2 weeks when it should have emerged in 2 days. And I'd take the cell apart, and there'd be a dead pupa in there. And the bees will almost never chew out a cell from the head part of the cell. It's almost like they're not going to take a chance on something fighting us in this cell. But if they kill it, they'll just leave it there. And they kill those queen cells. So I put uncapped cells in there, and they actually made them. And that was how I requeened those 2 hives. So I broke all those 48 or 46 other hives down. And out of the 46, I managed to get 44 of them requeened that summer. It was a summer-long job of doing that. And the way I did it was break them down into 2-frame nukes. 2 frames of bees, and I would just I would just gut it out and grab 2 or 3 frames of bees and put it in the nuke box as fast as I could work, and move until I had a hive completely empty. And I used every nuke box I had plus some that I had to buy new or old used ones, and eventually wound up putting 2 frames of bees in 10-frame boxes. And I had hives scattered out all over that field out there with 2 frames of bees, 2 to 3 frames of bees, and an uncapped queen cell. And they eventually requeened themselves.
But if you didn't find the queens, how did you know if they were in one of the 2-frame nukes or not?
If they didn't make a cell,
Then you knew.
then I knew there was a queen in there.
Slipping them virgins in at that time.
It wouldn't work.
Wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't have worked. No, they're pretty vicious. I mean, and it's not just Africanized bees. It's any bees that are drastically different genetically from what you're trying to introduce. And the uncapped cell is a way to get around that. And if it has queen in there, they won't finish the cell. So I wound up 2 hives still had the old queens in them going into the winter. I just took the lid off of both of them going into the winter and said, "It's good enough for you. Good luck wintering at this." One of them did.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, one of them did winter with that. The other one didn't, and I did a little happy dance over their carcasses. But
You can't cut out an uncapped cell, right? Like you couldn't cut out one from the frame. It's uncapped.
yeah, you can cut out an uncapped cell. Yeah, you can do that. It's easier if you graft, but you can cut out an uncapped cell. But the other one survived the winter, and they seem to be doing pretty good the next spring. And Valerie said, "Well, are you going to keep that one?" I said, "I'm going to keep the box." You know, if you're talking about the hive, I'm going to keep the box. But she said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" And I'm going to do the same thing I did last year. And they tried to supersede their own queen that next spring, and I cut all the cells out. And they kept trying to supersede her, and eventually they fixed my problem for me. They killed their own queen, and in superseding the queen, and I cut all the cells out and put an uncapped cell in there, and they finished it.
Wow.
And even cutting all the cells out with no queen, they still wouldn't accept a capped cell. So I spent a year and a half fooling with those stupid bees. And I'm telling you all this to let you know, be very careful where you get bees from. Know the areas that you're likely to get bees that are suspect, and just understand what you're getting. I mean, some of the best beekeepers that I know, bar none, are around Fort Pierce, Florida. I mean, these guys are very dedicated and very good at what they do. And they work these Africanized bees every day. And they do fine with them. But I don't want any of them. It's not that I can't work them, it's just that I don't want to work them. You know, I could get a job roofing buildings, and I'm terrified of heights. It's not that I can't do it, it's just that I don't want to. Same way with keeping those crazy bees. And I will not raise a queen from a hive that the bees run off the frame.
Yeah.
When you pull the frame out, they just all run off of it. Not raising queens from those, and that's not going in my drone pool. That's staying right close to home until I can requeen it with something that has some brains. And I don't care if they do live better than other bees. If they make my life more difficult, then I'm not keeping them here.
So you use mostly Italians?
Well, they're a high percentage Italian. I can't see to start out with. I can't say they're all of anything. Some of them are a little bit darker than Italians would look, but I would say they act Italian. And acting Italian means that you can stimulate them and they will respond to it. And Russians, Caucasians, and Carniolans do not respond to stimulation, stimulative feed, the same way Italians do.
Yeah.
But you can have mixes between those, and they will respond to it. So the bees that we raise, and it's not just us, it's other guys that we work with, that we trade material with, trade genetics with. We all raise bees that when you feed them, the brood nest just explodes. And the queens raise a lot of brood, and Carniolans, Caucasians, and Russians, especially Russians, you feed them and they appreciate it, but they just don't reciprocate. They don't. The brood nest does not expand like an Italian hive would. And even though I'm sure we have some Russian genetics in our bees, and I'm sure there's maybe some Carniolan or Caucasian genetics, but they act more like Italians. And that's what we need for our business. And unless you have a honey flow that starts later in the season, or you're raising bees to, say, pollinate melons, which you're not going to have to put them on melons until May 20th or something like that, you want the biggest hive you can get as early as you can get it. Those are the bees that'll make you money. And that's what we shoot for every year. So we want something that we can feed, and starting around the 3rd, 4th week of January, we can start putting some feed on them. We're going to have a natural flow. We're going to have a maple bloom anywhere from the 4th week of January to 2nd week of February. We'll have a maple bloom, and it's on then. But that's because of we don't choose to raise queens from bees that do not respond to feed. And I learned it wasn't put to me in those terms, but that's the underlying principle to it. But a guy that I learned a whole lot from in just general bee, not biology, but economics. He had, at that time, he had about 8,000 hives. But I asked him once, I said, so do you buy breeders every year to raise queens? He said, no, we don't ever buy a breeder unless we are at an auction or something for charity and we end up winning a breeder because we bid at an auction. He said, that's the only breeders we ever get, and we don't depend on those. I said, well, how do you choose your queens he said, we use our own queens for breeders. I said, well, how do you choose them? Is it from most productive? And he said, well, yeah, kind of. He said, we choose bees from hives that were high producers the year before, that survived the winter and start building up the fastest in the spring. That's what we choose from to raise queens. And that kind of struck a chord with me. And that's one of the many little tidbits that I stole from people that knew more about it than I did, that I still use that. We raise queens. The reason we grafted from the hive that we grafted from yesterday, that hive's been here for 4 years. It had a 2-year-old queen in it, and they survived the winter and built up fast enough that I split them in the middle of March this year. Well, 3rd week of March this year. And that was the whole reason that we grafted from that. We're going to graft from one right next to it that's exactly that same thing. There were 2 hives on that pallet. Now you'll see that there's 4 hives on that pallet. That's because they were split the 3rd week of March. Both of them built up heavy enough that they could be split. And they didn't really have any advantage that any of these other hives didn't have. It's just that those particular hives survived the winter and survived me and built up fast in the spring. Those are the bees that'll make you money. And they're kind of nice to work.
Now, when you split yours in the middle of March, I know generally that's way early.
Yeah.
How do you requeen it? Or do you just say, hey, it's got queen cell in it?
It depends.
I'm just going to move that queen cell.
It depends on how many drones are there. If I'm seeing drones in the hive, then I'll put a queen cell in it. I will actually make a queen cell and put a queen cell in it. If I'm not seeing any drones in the hive, then I'll use a mated queen to put in there. And there were plenty of drones. 3rd week of March, we had a lot of drones this year already, because we had an early maple bloom this year.
Maybe they laid drones over winter and You got a bunch of them in there.
Yeah, our maple bloom was second week of January this year, our early maple bloom. And we had a couple of successive maple blooms in other species of maples after that. So there were drones in the hives this year. So I could use a queen cell and get away with it. Now, the one we split yesterday, I had to go to the second cell because the first one, she didn't come back from a mating flight. So I had to go to the second cell. But the other one, it came back from a mating flight. So if there's no drones, you need to use a mating queen. And before you make your splits, if you're going to have to buy, if you know you're going to have to get a mating queen, make sure you know that you're going to be able to get a mating queen from a place that you want to get queens from. And usually our earliest, if we need queens really early, there's a couple of producers in California that will have early queens, and they're reputable. You can depend on them not being in an Africanized area.
Because normally your queens, you don't get them till like end of April to middle of May.
We can get queens from first week of April forward, but your early queens are going to be your poorest queens that you'd buy all year.
Yeah.
And because of the drone pool, competition for the drone pool. So a queen that you buy in May will be a lot better than the queen that you buy the 1st of April.
Drones are more plentiful.
More drones, yeah. More drones, and there's less competition for the drone pool. We've been conditioned to believe that we got to have a queen the 1st of April. We got to have as early a queen as possible. And everybody's rushing for those queens, so that's where the big bottleneck is. And you're getting queens that haven't been in a mating nuke for any longer than just to know that it's a queen in there. So there's no way to do any quality control for the breeders to do that. And they get pulled and shipped, and you may get one that's mated poorly or maybe not mated at all. And by May, you're getting queens that have a little bit of quality control exercised on them. So it's better to get a later queen than an earlier queen. But it's like Josh said a while ago, at some time you'll realize that any queen is better than no queen.
Yeah. At least you got something later.
Yeah.
That's it. And then four layers, you get another layer.
I missed something about the drones. How come you picked one with drones in there for the queen cell when they fly out? So I'm not understanding.
Well, if your hive has drones in it, it's not the only hive around that's got drones in it. That's going to be a area-wide thing.
Is it more swarmy or?
No, they're not more swarmy, but you just want to make sure there's drones in there before you start trying to raise a queen, or it'd be like trying to raise calves with no bull in the field.
Just didn't, yeah.
Yeah.
By seeing drones physically in there versus uncapping drone pupa and looking for the purple-eyed drones,
Yeah.
you know that we're later on, right?
Oh, I see
Yeah.
I see what
Yeah, I want to see a live drone in there.
I see what you're
And
talking about.
at that point, if I'm going to put a cell in there, I don't care if the drone is mature or not.
So you're not pushing on them with your
Because
finger.
by the time
Okay.
the cell emerges, chances are it takes drones 14 days to be mature enough to mate. And by the time the cell emerges and the queen takes a mating flight, they're probably going to be mature. But if you want to age a drone and see if it's going to be mature enough to mate, if you find a drone crawling across the frame, if you'll hold it down with your finger on the frame, if it buzzes real loud, but you take your finger off of it and it just walks off, it's close, but it's not ready. It's not mature. If you put your finger on it and it buzzes real loud and then you take your finger off and it flies off, that drone's mature. And so you're safe getting the queen's mated any time then. If you hold your finger on it and it just sits there, it's young and stupid. It's got about another 10 days before that it's going to be mature enough to mate. And so when you're seeing live drones in a hive, if you start your queen rearing process right then, you'll hit everything right on time. You may not be able to put a capped queen cell, a 10-day cell in a hive, and get it mated well if you're just seeing live drones in a hive. But if you start that process, by the time you get a 10-day cell, that drone's going to be mature enough to mate. And those are just some of the things that you have to consider when you're raising queens. And that's not just for early spring. If we have a drought and there's not any good pollen, not any good forage, middle of the summer, bees will kick out all the drones. They kill all the drones. They're cutting their losses. And in that case, if you go into a hive, if you're seeing dead drones out in front of the hive, live drones or drone pupa dragged out of the hive, then you need to make sure that there's some live drones in there before you start your queen rearing. Because that can happen in July or August just like it can in February and March.
The wax start turning a darker color as well during that time. So the wax cappings turn like a darker color or something.
Well, when you're raising queens, the wax on the cells will usually be, this time of year, will be really light colored. The reason for that is there's lots of young bees in the hive. They're the ones doing the queen rearing, and they're producing the wax from their bodies that they're using to make the cells. So it'll be a real light color. As your cell builder gets older, or as the bees that are producing the cells get older, then their wax glands aren't working. They atrophy at about 3 weeks old. So their wax glands aren't working, and the cells get darker because they're stealing that wax from somewhere else and making the queen cells. When you're seeing queen cells with dark wax, that's kind of suspect, because if there were old bees making those queen cells, it's not just the wax glands that have atrophied, it's also the hypopharyngeal gland that makes
Royal
brood
jelly.
food.
Yeah.
So that queen larva may not have been fed nearly as well as a queen cell that has light wax on it.